People camping out store all night for new Apple releases.
Those long lines are forming. The frenzy does not seem to die down.
Number one, baby.
How long have you been here?
Since 2 a.m.
Apple-themed tattoos, and of course, the Apple-only lifestyle.
I use, my laptop, everything, my Apple Watch, I have everything is an Apple.
Yeah.
It's from, Apple, but Android, I can't do.
Apple has grown to become the largest consumer technology device company in the world, thanks primarily to the success of the iPhone, the iPad, and their profit-focused BMW-style pricing model.
Pro Display XDR will be $49.99 for the display itself. And the Nano Texture version will be $59.99. The Visa mount adapter will be $199, and the Pro stand, $9.99.
This logo is somewhat of a trendy status symbol for those that can afford it, and well, the cult of the Mac is bigger than ever.
Gotta represent.
He's a 10, but he has an Android phone. What's his new rating?
A 0.
Single iPhone users don't want to date someone with an Android. Ooh.
Yeah, Match.com finds out that Apple iPhone owners are 21 times more likely to judge others negatively for having an Android.
I guess we can all agree that all of this seems a little absurd, doesn't it? The Apple brand has come to represent more than just tech as we know it. It has become a status symbol of sorts. Those that have it flaunt it,
I have an iPhone.
and those that can't afford it want it.
You want an iPad?
Yes.
I'm sorry, but you can't have an iPad.
Could Apple possibly be one of the greatest tech products ever created? Probably not, depending on who you ask. Regardless, everyone is lining up for a new iPhone 15 or bugging their mom for a new pair of Apple AirPods Max. What's the secret? What is the secret behind Apple products' enormous growth in sales? Why does Apple remain one of the most sought after smartphones? What does it even take to be considered a luxury tech brand and touted by celebrities?
This is a game changer.
Influencers, and of course, how could I forget the Kardashian wannabes?
I have an iPhone as well. It's harder to connect.
Oh, true.
With an Android person. Their phone's green all the time, and it just feels weird.
I'd like to believe I have somewhat of a healthy relationship with tech and technology brands in general, including Apple. Without bias or perversion, I'm more of the idea that let the best product win. A ton of us out there would probably go to great lengths to ensure that every piece of tech in our lives is Apple branded, even if it means avoiding other devices that might offer better functionality or value. I have no intention of slamming Apple or its products or anything. Heck, I'm an iPhone user myself, and as someone who enjoys the occasional Apple product, I understand the allure. I guess I'm interested in why this particular brand has us all hooked. And hold on, before you flag criticism as blasphemy, I'd rather we call it an unbiased opinion piece. I'm as much an Apple consumer as I am a Sony consumer or a Huawei consumer. Well, maybe one thing that I'm not is a member of the Mac cult.
It's not Apple, so it's shit.
I wish Apple made clothes.
I will buy anything with an Apple logo on it.
I wish Apple made barbecue sauce.
I am a huge Apple fanboy.
I wish Apple made condoms.
We weren't always obsessed with gadgets. Before the 1970s, technology was far from the sleek devices we carry today. I want you to think more typewriters and rotary phones. Well, let's just say it wasn't the iPhone. So where does all of this begin? As soon as microprocessors became available, companies jumped on the chance to make personal computers. Some sold computer kits that required soldering skills, while others produced polished commercial products. It's more accurate to say there were several companies in the 1970s that brought PCs to market, including MITS, IMSAI, Tandy, TRS, Atari, and Apple Computers. The Apple II was actually Apple Computers' first commercial product. Yes, there was an Apple I, but it was just a computer kit that Steve Wozniak built to show off to his fellow computer hobbyists. So, who is Steve Wozniak, you ask? Steve Wozniak is the co-founder of Apple Computer and the technical genius who designed the Apple I, a computer he later refined to create the Apple II. The other Steve you normally hear about in Apple-related press today, Steve Jobs, was Wozniak's friend, who had just enough technical knowledge to be a sales guy. And so, Apple Computer was founded by two Steves. Unfortunately, neither Steve had the money to start a successful computer company. That's where multimillionaire Mike Marcola comes into the picture. Marcola, an experienced businessman, invested $250,000 into Apple Computer and handled the business side of things to make it successful. His strategy priced the Apple II well above the competition, providing a larger profit margin. This allowed Apple to spend a lot more on marketing and cosmetic features like the computer case. Marcola figured out that people would be willing to spend more money on a computer if it looked good and was marketed aggressively. And guess what? It worked.
This is our millionth Apple II computer, and that's why it's gold. And a million sounds like a large number, but you remember number 1, you remember number 100. This is number 1,000,000 of the Apple IIs, and that'll probably seem small in a couple years.
Then came the revolutionary Macintosh, with cases molded with the signatures of each person of the Macintosh team because Steve Jobs considered each Macintosh a work of art. The only problem, the Macintosh sold poorly. At $2,500 in 1984, it was just too damn expensive. Luckily, the Apple II kept the money flowing. As Apple grew, both Steves left the company. Wozniak left in 1981, frustrated with the growing corporate culture, while Jobs wasn't so lucky. He was forced out in 1985 after senior management got tired of him being, well, a jerk. We've probably heard the story a million times. Imagine starting an empire only to be kicked out of it. After leaving Apple, Wozniak entered semi-retirement. He just wanted to play the guitar and smoke his pipe, or whatever it is that retired tech geniuses do. Jobs, on the other hand, wasn't ready to settle down. He formed another company, Next, designed to compete with Apple, and went back to hire employees from the original Macintosh team to create the Next computer, which launched in 1988. So, while Steve Jobs was off doing his thing, what was Apple up to in the 1980s and the early 1990s? Sure, Apple raked in over $1 billion annually during the 1980s, but the 1990s were a bit gloomy. The IBM PC entered the market and quickly became the standard in personal computing. Apple was essentially a big company advertising overpriced Macs and getting hammered by PC competition. I know what you're thinking, that I'm probably just throwing shade for no reason, but hear me out. The Macintosh 6100s came with a PowerPC processor to run the Mac OS, as well as an Intel 486 CPU to run a Windows 3.1. In short, it was as if Apple was saying, yes, we know our OS sucks, so we'll sell you an overpriced machine that can also run Windows to make it useful. Just buy it, please. Not exactly Apple's finest moment. By 1996, Apple was on the verge of bankruptcy. Luckily for them, Steve Jobs returned. The return of the prodigal son, if you will. Fast forward to 2001 and they released the iPod. This little piece of tech became the hottest gadget in the world for many years and made Apple a household name. Apple was back in the game.
This is the new iPod Nano.
By 2011, Apple was making $16.6 billion in profit annually. The iPod led to more Mac sales, but the real game changer was the iPhone, Apple's holy grail. By 2011, if you wanted to look cool, forget the Nikes. All you needed was a Mac and an iPhone. Apple had become the BMW of technology, the must-have brand for every Kardashian wannabe. Of course, Steve got all the credit for this. No, not that Steve. This Steve. The man was glorified. Remember the big budget movie and the best-selling biography following his death? To put it more simply, Steve Jobs was portrayed as the god of tech to the nation of zombies. Sorry, I mean Apple fans. Now this is where all the fun begins. By 2013, Apple was massive under a new leader, Tim Cook, who was laser focused on maximizing profits. Tim knew that Apple had the brand that everyone wanted, a loyal fan base ready to buy whatever Apple released. As Apple's phones got pricier, the improvements often didn't quite match the price tags, especially compared to their Android counterparts. It's a debate that spanned the decades, like Windows versus Mac OS or Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. where do we start? You could argue that Android offers flexibility and variety with premium features like 5G at a more affordable price point. On the other hand, the iPhone shines in user experience and is a favorite among video creators, particularly with features on the iPhone 15.
Does Marques Brownlee like Android or iOS better?
Okay, so the 10 doesn't have the fastest download speeds.
Well, no, but it is faster than the iPhone 8.
But the download speeds aren't faster than the Galaxy S9. But I thought it was the smartphone of the future.
Look,
Apple was built on the human ability to change things around and your natural, the way you do things. Android doesn't have any of that.
I split my time, for real, but I do prefer, if I could only use one, I would just have the Android phone.
We could go on forever comparing the two. Okay, let's filter through all the noise. The real reason iPhone users hate Android is because of the green bubble. The infamous green bubble. It's funny how a little color can cause so much drama. God. Forget the specs, the camera quality, or the customization options. It all comes down to this.
Those green bubbles.
What's wrong with the green bubble?
I don't know, it's just weird. It's cheap. You're cheap.
I text you with a green bubble, which Apple decided, first of all, to differentiate iMessage versus text message, which is hilarious. Who cares?
I guess at the end of the day, it's all about what you prefer, right? To each their own. But what's more interesting to me is how Apple has developed something resembling of a cult following. Unlike what the word cult might suggest, not all cult members wear black robes, an Apple necklace, and carry a picture of Steve Jobs. Nah, they come from all walks of life. Unkempt hippies, sharply dressed salespeople, reclusive nerds, construction workers, and of course, the Kardashian wannabes. Okay, I should stop saying that. Most of them probably don't know much about tech and are just as likely to be a cult member as the artsy influencers sipping lattes at Starbucks. They're all different, but what they share is an unhealthy obsession for anything Apple. The basic tenets of the modern cult of Mac are very simple. Apple products are superior and will always be superior to any other technology product on the market. Therefore, owning an Apple product makes you inherently superior to everyone else who doesn't. Thou shalt not criticize Apple products. Any imperfections are intentional and designed to enhance user experience. Hardware failures are always due to human error and should never be blamed on Apple. New Apple product features are to be praised as innovation. Even if other technology vendors introduced them first, Apple is the only true innovator in the tech industry. You should buy Apple products as soon as they become available. Keeping older products is akin to living in the past. Those products lack the latest innovations and prevent you from living life to the fullest. I guess what many cult members don't realize is that Apple isn't just selling you a product. They're selling you a brand and heavily encouraging you to become a fan of that brand. Do I blame them? Probably not. Branding is at the heart of every successful business, isn't it? Needless to say, Apple has introduced some great products. The Apple II, PowerBooks, Mac Pros, MacBooks, iPods, iPads, and iPhones, along with various versions of macOS and iOS. But if you look at other companies, they've also introduced some impressive products, sometimes even better than Apple's offerings. Yet, somehow, we've been convinced that this brand, this logo, stands for something deeply personal and essential. I'd argue that you're sold a dream, and the dream is their brand. This brand worship makes a cult member believe that everything Apple does is best and nothing else matters. Let's face it, Apple products come with a hefty price tag. Like any other luxury brand, you're paying for something else beyond the product's actual utility. You're paying for the privilege of being part of the cult. An extra $1,000 or two just to flaunt that shiny logo. I guess this opens up an entire debate. Is Apple a luxury brand? Economists and marketers don't agree on what exactly defines luxury. Some say it's about presence of a particular property or even several properties. Womp, womp, womp. It is always possible to find cases in which this property or properties do not exist. I mean, have a look at these two bags. Spot the difference? Well, one is a Birkin coming at a hefty 200,000 US dollars. Okay, maybe we should define luxury by cost. Not really. Chatelaine water is labeled as luxury but costs under 10 euros a bottle. The real question is the price difference between luxury items and their ordinary counterparts. I guess all I'm saying is that just because a significant number of the masses can afford an iPhone, it doesn't mean it isn't luxury. Heck, a homeless guy could afford a bottle of Chatelaine water once a week if he wanted to, but that wouldn't mean it doesn't qualify as luxury anymore. Then if inherent properties and price don't necessarily define luxury, then it must be more of a social construct. It must be more of what society deems valuable. Luxury items, as it seems, stand out because of their perceived exclusivity and status. We've not come to the conclusion that Apple is definitely luxury. I guess at the end of the day, that's for you to decide. But while you're at it, October 15, 2013, Apple hires Burberry CEO Angela Ahrendts.
Apple hires Burberry CEO Angela Ahrendts to head up its retail efforts.
For a lot of techies, this was a little baffling. I mean, you have a guy who can write code in his sleep being managed by someone who knows more about trench coats than transistors. It's like hiring a gourmet chef to run a pizza joint. Sure, it might work out great, but it's definitely going to be a fancy pizza. A seller of high-priced raincoats selling tablets and smartphones? But if you think about it, isn't Ahrendts a perfect hire? I mean, hasn't Apple become a luxury brand first and a technology company second? Okay, maybe not entirely, right? Fast forward to 2015 and Apple co-brands with Hermes. For the first time in its history, Hermes shares some of its fabled orange box with a partner brand, Apple. They release a special edition Apple Watch featuring a Hermes branded dial and bracelet, selling for a cool $1,250 at select Apple stores and Hermes boutiques. I mean, the watch itself is gorgeous. The original Apple Watch was a bit of a utilitarian affair, but add a touch of Hermes savoir-faire and a famous halo effect of two cool brands briefly coming together as one, and the results are extremely attractive. More interesting is what the co-branding strategy says about the two partners behind this limited edition. For Hermes, it was a chance to inject some modernity and freshness into a brand known for its tradition and heritage. For Apple, the partnership is as clear a sign as we could get that it now considers itself as a luxury brand. I mean, look at Apple's price point. Look at their visual merchandising. Look at their creative directors. Look at their executive team. Look at their mythological founder. Apple is more Hermes than Samsung, and it clearly intends to keep it that way. So we've established that Apple likes to think of itself as the Hermes of tech, but let's hit the brakes for a second. There's a little detail that Apple might be glossing over: the difference between a premium product and a true luxury item. Now, I'm not saying Apple isn't a fantastic brand. It's one of the best regarded globally, but let's not kid ourselves. Luxury items aren't just expensive, they're rare, exclusive, and often handmade with the utmost craftsmanship. Think of a luxury item like a Rolex or a Birkin bag. These are not products you will see in every other person's hand or wrist, but Apple's products are mass-produced, mass-distributed, and believe it or not, price-sensitive. Literally everybody and their grandmother has an iPhone. They're the very definition of mass-market products. Sure, they sit at the top of that market, but that's still the mass market. Take an Apple Watch for example. The actual value of the components in one, around $80. Yep, $80, you had it right. Apple's competitors make similar products with similar components. Sure, Apple has dipped a few of those watches in gold to give them a luxury sheen, but you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. No pun intended. Apple's great, one of the best, but gold plating a gadget that will be obsolete in a year is just a waste of gold. The fact that iProducts, computer, phone, watch diminish in value in a short period of time positions them as trends that change with each new generation. Trendy fashion is the mark of a premium product, not the more iconic status of a luxury product that retains and even increases in value over time. I can see an executive using the technology to enable him or her while jogging to have access to more stuff, from directions to heart rate to emails, but I do not see it replacing his or her Piguet, Roger Dubuis, or Rolex. So no, Apple isn't luxury. I'm sorry to pop your bubble. It's just a premium product pretending to be luxury. But one thing we can't deny is Apple is great at convincing us that their products are the epitome of luxury.
Incredible iPhones we've ever made. This is the brand new rose gold aluminum finish. And while it may look the same, this is an entirely new aluminum. It is an Apple custom alloy of 7000 series aluminum.
Jobs' holistic approach to connecting with consumers has created the most loyal customer base of any brand. Seriously, people camp out of Apple stores the night before a new product release, like they're waiting for tickets to a sold-out concert, just to be first in line when the doors open. Dedication or obsession, you decide. Hop onto Reddit and you'll find Apple's brand ambassadors eagerly defending their favorite tech against any critics. Apple's loyal supporters, famously or infamously known as the iSheep. It makes me wonder, are we all just impressed by the build quality, or is there something deeper going on here? Could it be a desire to belong to the community of free thinkers, or simply a need to feel like one of the cool kids on the block? Maybe it's both. Either way, we've all joined an in-group, and anyone who isn't part of our circle, well, they're just the barbarians who don't get it. Criticism of the brand's flaws become labeled as personal attacks. It's like saying something bad about Apple is the same as saying something bad about them. This tribalism is essential for keeping Apple's brand strong. And what do you get from this tribal mentality? The endless, pointless Apple versus Android arguments. Of course. But dude, at the end of the day, we're all going to consume something. Whether it's goods that actually serve a purpose or flashy status symbols that make us feel like we're living our best lives, it's just who we are. We've been doing it for centuries. Our grandfathers bought shiny pocket watches to charm the grannies, and now we're snagging the latest iPhone to impress Instagram baddies. Same game, different century. But suppose we concede that Apple products are Veblen products, right? Oh, by the way, Veblen goods is essentially a type of good for which demand increases as the price rises. Does this mean that owning an iPhone is equivalent to wealth? We might be quick to assume that if Apple products are Veblen goods, then they must be purchased as a signal of wealth. Premature conclusion if you ask me, especially since owning an iPhone isn't exactly a credible indicator of wealth. Hear me out. You can get the newest iPhone for $199 on contract if you wanted to. Plus, a ton of people own iPhones. And let's be honest, not all of them are filthy rich. Nobody sees somebody holding an iPhone and thinks, wow, they must be loaded. It's a bit absurd when you consider that everyone and their grandma has one. And we all know everyone and their grandma isn't exactly swimming in cash. Just because Apple products are tied to conspicuous consumption doesn't mean that they're meant to signal wealth. For some, owning an Apple product could signal being in the know or tech savvy. Deservedly or not, it also shows that you're part of an Apple tribe, which some people care about a lot. Again, deservedly or not, it's an old tribe and it's going nowhere. Brands are here to stay. We can argue about the merits of Apple, Android is better, yada yada yada, debate whether we're all just mindlessly consuming shiny gadgets and poke fun at the whole cult mentality, but at the end of the day, we're all suckers for this stuff. Whether it's the sleek design of an iPhone, the green logo on a Starbucks cup, or the swoosh on a pair of Nikes, brands have us in a chokehold. They're not just selling us products, they're selling us a lifestyle, a story that for some dumb reason we're also desperate to buy into. And as long as there's a market for these stories, brands will keep doing their thing, emptying our wallets while making us feel like we're the ones winning. So sure, you might roll your eyes at the latest iPhone launch or chuckle at the thought of people queuing for hours to get their hands on a pair of Apple Vision Pros. But deep down, we all know that we're just as hooked as everyone else. And honestly, we've probably convinced ourselves that we wouldn't have it any other way. Because what's life without a bit of brand loyalty, a little conspicuous consumption, and a whole lot of shiny toys to keep us distracted from the fact that we're all being played?